Q&A with the Sheikh. The question is, Dear Sheikh, it has been all over social media of many people attacking the Quran, saying it has not been preserved perfectly. And people who post against Islam attacking the Quran quote famous scholar blank, I'm not going to give his name, of giving credibility to there being holes in the narrative of the Quran being preserved. Please, in the best and briefest way, reassure me that the Quran has been preserved perfectly all these years. I do admit Shaitan is putting doubts in my heart on this issue. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. All praises belong to Allah. To people like David Wood, who misquote people or take things out of context and blow it out of proportion and rile up social media, and in the process they disparage Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they lie about Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Hud, verse 18, وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ أَفْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَاذِبًا. And who does more wrong than the person who invents a lie about Allah? أُولَٰئِكَ يُعْرَضُونَ عَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ وَيَقُولُ أَشْهَدُ هَؤُلَاءِ الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا عَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ. They will be presented before the Lord, and the witnesses will say, these are the people who lied against the Lord. Unquestionably, the curse of Allah is upon the wrongdoers. Now, in regards to this famous Sheikh you're making a reference to, which I'm not going to say his name, but the social media went crazy with a quote taken from him that was out of context. This honorable scholar had to deal with a lot of slander and a lot of backlash, and it was blown out of proportion. And making it clear, believing that there are holes in the narrative of how the Quran was compiled historically is very subjective, or it's the personal view of someone. And even holding that view, as this great scholar may have been came off as to some people, who's being unfairly slandered, this does not actually equate to saying that the one denies that the Quran has been preserved. There could be holes in the story, but the final product still is proven to be perfectly preserved. And this video will demonstrate and show that without any doubts. Because 1500 years have passed, it's this or that, it's how you quote all these narrations and in what context, and playing devil's advocate, which is what these non-Muslim Islamophobes literally do. They misquote, misinterpret, intentionally lie, and mistranslate, I've caught them. And they want to give this impression that the Quran is missing verses and chapters, and that this bold claim that the Quran has been perfectly preserved is a big lie, according to the Islamophobes. And I'm only addressing this person, David Wood, because he has created a lot of doubts into the hearts of many Muslims. And he riled up social media, attacking one of the great scholars of our time, quoting him out of context. So with all due respect and with love for my elders and love for my scholars of our ummah, I want to give some nasiha and to answer this question of explaining and convincingly that the Quran has been preserved. Muslims are not taking the right approach in being convincing without any doubt that the Quran has been perfectly preserved in both form and precise order for 1500 years. Again, with all due respect, and I love my elders and respect them and I honor them, but the correct approach to explaining the preservation of the Quran is not by quoting hadiths or quoting history, because you kind of will be talking in circles to people who will play devil's advocate and trying to find holes into these narratives. Whether you agree or disagree, if there's holes in the narrative, is very subjective, based on how the evidence is being interpreted. But the best approach and most convincing way to show without any doubt that the Quran has been preserved in both form and order all these centuries is point out to the disbelievers, how can there be this many miracles that are scientific or mathematical? That discovery is contingent upon the Quran having the form and order that we have today. It doesn't matter what hadith you quote out of context or what history you bring up. The man in explanation to David Wood, to these people who make a living disparaging Islam and lying and saying that the Quran has not been preserved, demand an explanation that how can they explain the miracles that are scientific or mathematical that is present in the Quran today. A human could not have created the Quran. So Where should we start, and which miracles that are mathematical and scientific that we want to bring up to people like David Wood or Islamophobes, and that we also want to dispel any doubts that any Muslim have in their hearts, that the Quran is indeed preserved. We will start with the miracles that relate to iron. Iron in Arabic is called hadid. Please memorize that. Just this one chapter, 57, has enough mathematical and scientific miracles that proves without a doubt that the Quran is in the same order, in the same amount of order of chapters, verses, letters, and form that it was compiled 1500 years ago. Unless you are accusing Uthman ibn Affan of conspiring and playing with the verses and purposely arranging the Quran and the verses in a way that all these miracles were derived from that relate to math and science. Uthman never, not to put him down, he never went to school. So, let's start out with pointing out some of the coincidences with Surah Iron. These coincidences that relate to Surah Iron prove scientific facts, and they prove it is like a sign to reflect from Allah that this Quran came from Allah. First of all, we know that iron makes up the middle of the earth. So underground beneath us, there is a core. The middle of the earth is made up of iron. Scientists just recently have discovered that iron did not come from the planet Earth, but it came from outer space, just like with water. But 1500 years ago, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in chapter 57, which is named iron, verse 26, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَاسٌ, and we sent down from the heavens or space iron for mankind. So, just right there, David Wood, can he explain what, or any Islamophobe who doubts the authenticity of the Quran, how did any of the Arabs know that iron came from outer space? Scientists just recently realized that recently. And, this is sometimes the problems with atheism. If you didn't know it came from space by meteorites, you would have thought it came from the earth because iron is found from deep underground at its core. Now, there are a lot of coincidences with the way that the verses are numbered and the way that they are placed in order that just could not have been accidental. For example, the atomic number of iron is 26. 26, the atomic number is basically how many protons that atom has. How many protons an atom has gives its chemical properties. Okay? So iron has 26 protons. And that's what gives its properties. It's called Fe. So, is it a coincidence that if you start in chapter 57 from verse 1 to go to the verse that mentions the word iron, hadid, you have to recite 26 verses. You have to recite 25 verses, and at the 26th verse, the word iron is mentioned. Was that a coincidence? Did Uthman ibn Affan purposely put iron as a 26th verse on chapter 57 just to point out that it just somehow aligned that iron is the 26th element on the periodic table, and it's also the 26th verse in Surah Iron. Also, is there anything significant about the number 57? 57 is the middle number or the center of the Quran, and it's named iron. The middle of the earth is also made up of iron. Also, 57 is the isotope number of iron that is the most stable, that makes up the mantle or makes up that's beneath our feet. So, did Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh, or did any of the Sahabas know that isotope 57 of iron is the middle of the earth, and they decided to place iron in the middle of the Quran on purpose because of that scientific fact? They did not know this. So who is behind the numbering? That this means that Uthman compiled the Quran in accordance with how Allah revealed it, if all of these coincidences are being pointed out. And here is the biggest coincidence that will shock you. 5,153. What's so special about 5,153? Remember, It doesn't matter, how many signs we show to the disbelievers, how many miracles, how many coincidences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, indeed, to those whom the word of your Lord has become justified, they will never believe, even if every sign comes to them. For them is until they see the painful punishment. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ حَقَّتْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْكَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ وَلَوْ جَاءَهُمْ كُلُّ آيَاتٍ حَتَّى يَرَوْا الْعَذَابُ الْأَلِيمُ. So, what's the miracle of 5,153? So that verse 56:27, which mentions the iron came down from space. How many verses in the Quran from the beginning do you have to recite to get to that verse that mentions that iron came from space? The verse about iron. You have to count 5,153 verses. I did a fact check on many websites that counts the verses, how many verses there are in the Quran. And in between chapter 1, verse 1, and chapter 57, verse 26, which mentions the word iron of coming down from the heavens, you get 5,153 verses that you have to recite. Is this a coincidence? Or did Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh do this on purpose, and the Sahabas did this on purpose? They plagiarized the Quran or the Quran is not in this perfect order. It just happens to be that if you go dig deep underground and you go to the core of the earth where there's the iron, the hard iron, you will have to dig 5,153 kilometers from the surface to reach the iron. Is that a coincidence? That could not have been a coincidence. The Sahabas did not count 5,153 verses and then said, okay, now we're going to put the verse iron. It's just not by coincidence. This coincidence is a scientific miracle today, because that is the exact distance, the approximate distance from the surface of the earth to the core. So it's amazing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is certainly we have revealed the reminder or the dhikr, which is the Quran, and it's us, we will protect it or we will preserve it or whatever you want, So we only talked about Surah Iron, but there are so many more miracles that are mathematical or that are just coincidental, that tells you a lot of scientific facts that display that this was not the Sahabas who put the Quran in the order they thought. Sahabas put the order of the Quran, compiled it according to how it was revealed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, by the angel Gabriel alayhi wasalam. So, inshallah, there's talk about what are the harufs and this and that, it doesn't matter how many holes, or it doesn't matter what people can point out. These miracles just in Surah Hadid that you can point out. And there's many more that I didn't point out. For example, there's 4 layers of iron in the core of the earth. The word Hadid is made up of 4 letters. The grammatical value of iron is 26. Is that a coincidence? The grammatical value of Al-Hadid, the iron, is 57. Like chapter 57. So there's too many coincidences that I did not really mention in this video, because it would take a long time to talk. But my point is, Allah says, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَاسٌ. This was sent down, iron, but so was the Quran, was sent down from the heavens. Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. There is no doubt in this book, which is the Quran. So, inshallah, this is the most convincing way, and it will silence, because David Wood or any Islamophobe will not address how in the world these kind of coincidences, or in the numbering, have the verses of the Quran in the order that it's in, how it comes up, how it resembles scientific facts. He has no answer for this, and will probably never address the content of this video, because it will just destroy his whole narrative that the Quran is not preserved the way that it was revealed 1500 years ago. Please share this video and please subscribe. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.